talking true crime tonight, and there's plenty to go around, plenty of weirdness to go around. And I want to talk a little bit about our guest as we bring her on a little bit early, because why not? If she's sitting in the lobby, I just want to bring her in. Jennifer Youngblood, she is the brains and the voice of the operation on the J is for Justice channel on YouTube. In the true crime podcasting world, podcasting in general, Jennifer has amassed a large monthly audience of over 1 million listeners, and along the way has had her work featured on shows like Dateline, and now tonight she has the honor, the privilege of of being on, quite frankly, as well. Jay, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's
exciting.
This is very, very exciting. I'm so happy to have you on.
Glad to be here. Nice to meet you as well.
Oh, very nice to meet you. And I even took out a little bit of Bobby Darin for your appearance here. A little Mac the Knife.
Nice.
Have you ever jumped in, you know what, before we get into anything else, in your background and how this all started, have you ever done any organized crime related stories or anything like that?
You know, I haven't, but recently I started getting interested in some of the mobster stuff, but I haven't dug deep into that yet.
Are you talking about, like,
gone there yet?
Classic stories?
Like Jimmy Hoffa, you know, because I'm from Michigan,
Right.
and the whole Jimmy Hoffa thing is intriguing to me, but I haven't had time to dig into it.
You know, speaking of digging, every couple of years, actually, I think it was just a couple of months ago, I saw another Hoffa headline that they think that they know exactly where it is. He is,
Yeah.
or whatever. I don't know. So
I grew up in Michigan, so it's like every so often we'd hear like, oh my gosh, they're digging for Jimmy Hoffa's body, and then they never find it. So
yeah.
I feel like I need to dig into that more.
Why not? You know, and that's the thing I would say when it comes to organized crime. I would rather talk about something that happened 70 years ago than get a little bit too close. A little bit too close. Oh, yeah, it's an interesting question right there too. Do you or anybody in your line of work, do you ever say, I think this is a little bit too close to home on things, or this is still a little bit too raw, a little bit too unresolved? I don't want to get close to this because I may not be as protected as somebody else.
Yeah, but it's not in the mobster cases, believe it or not. Sometimes, well, that happened to me specifically in a missing child case that was unresolved. And it got really weird and really dark with some of the theories, you know, that she was sold, and just, I don't like going there at all. That kind of thing I don't like dabbling with. I like awareness of missing people, but when it comes to something that was unresolved and could result in that, and you get too close, it's a little scary because you don't know who's behind it.
Right. And I brought this up with other friends of mine who do the work that you do, and it's one of those, I don't know what you want to say, double-edged swords. It's great that so much of the world has been given the ability to put their minds to the test. I remember in 1995, I'm like 9-10 years old, and we even had all our own theories about O.J. Simpson. You know, and we're just watching that go on, and it was like, no. I was thinking about this, and he had the cut on his hand because he was probably home drinking a glass of wine. He heard that his ex-wife had been killed, and he was so shocked he dropped the glass, and he, But now because of the internet, there has been so much more involvement from just people out there, host and audience alike, and there's some unique opportunities to actually crack some cases that had been cold, but also you can also screw things up along the way too if you're not careful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've seen it go both ways, Frank.
Do you have
I've seen YouTubers, help solve crimes like the Gabby Petito case. YouTubers actually spotted her van, and that led to the discoverance of her body. But then I've also seen people online that add things to crimes, to make them more sensational, as if the crimes we follow aren't bad enough. But they do it. And I think that hinders the investigation at times. I mean, you hear a lot of times that, and it depends on the case, but we've heard from law enforcement say, we don't want tips from YouTube. We don't want tips from social media. So those things, I believe, can be a hindrance in certain cases.
And how did you get started doing what you do? Is this just a passion? Were you like me growing up watching unsolved mysteries back in
Of
the day? Yeah,
course.
so
Of course. It was actually Unsolved Mysteries. And the first true crime case I remember that really freaked me out, like you said, when you were like 9, 10 with OJ, I was like 6 when Adam Walsh was abducted. And I remember that because that was the start of stranger danger in schools and all this,
mm,
the milk cartons and the Walmart had the Adam code Adam. And it was something that was instilled in us in school, don't talk to strangers. So that intrigued me. But then also the Unsolved Mystery Show was probably the very beginning of watching all of these. And believe it or not, like I've gone back into on old Unsolved Mysteries and I actually interviewed one of the people from an old show from the 90s where a girl went missing.
wow.
So yeah, I mean, going back and watching through those and kind of looking up those people to see if they're resolved yet. And if they're not, we reach out and try to get that back into the limelight.
So who was the person? You don't have to give us any
Oh, I can
details.
tell you, it was the Angela Hammond case, which most people probably never heard about. But she was abducted from a payphone in Missouri. And the only clue they have is a truck, a green, like 70s style truck with the fish on the back window. Like those that's supposed to like obstruct the view into the back window of the
Yeah,
truck. And
yeah.
it's like a fish. Yeah, that's the only clue they have is that she was taken by this guy at a phone booth and put into this green, creepy truck. And they never found her body. So
And
I talked to her best friend
okay,
that was with her that night.
I was gonna say if were you talking to the investigator or somebody close to the victim? Okay,
Her best friend. And it's just like you see her as a grown adult now. They were, high school. They were seniors. And now to see her as an adult, it can be heavy at times, Frank, to see these people and hear their stories and how they've had to live throughout their whole lives with this unresolved of their loved one or their friend.
so in her case, there was nothing. There was no big conclusion or anything that they could actually
No.
rest on. That was it.
Mm-mm. And her mother passed away 2 years ago too. So that was really sad to hear. But
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? All it takes is one person to see something and go, I might have a clue on that.
Right. Well, on that, because I know that there's always been a growing and a very strong audience for true crime. I mean, but the only thing that's really changed is that there is now more than a few ways of being served it. I mean, we had to wait for new episodes of Robert Stack and Unsolved Mysteries and new seasons of that. But now people produce it independently, and there is so much to listen to that there's literally not enough time in the year to get
Mm-mm.
through it all. So I know that this is just exploding now. We got podcasts. There's another genre of media now that is we have legal commentators as if it's watching a sporting event who have brought new life to court TV, that they're actually commentating on court cases. Do you do any of that?
I have not, no, but I am intrigued by the Law Tube. They call it Law Tube
Yeah.
on YouTube. I love watching the lawyers because I don't have I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an investigator. I'm just a regular person who has an interest and a passion for these cases and digging into them and trying to figure out, what's here and what's there. But I do love watching those lawyers because we go through a lot of court trials and documents that we don't understand. And so we find our favorite lawyer and we have them break it down and then we understand it better so that we're giving out factual information instead of sitting there going, what does this mean? And trying to decipher it. I think it's helping me be more factual.
That's what I was and that's what I was gonna ask because are you working sources? Were you developing your own leads? But there's this amazing hand in glove kind of relationship between private investigators and people who are just better at conducting interviews and bringing in audiences and creating discussions around these things, almost like managing the open forum around these subjects. And so you are more on the media coverage and discussion end of things. You've never actually launched your own investigation.
No. Mm-mm.
Well,
No, we just follow cases that are going on, or ones that there's just certain ones that pop out to me. I won't follow every single case. It's literally, and I can't even there's no exact science to it. It's just, if I see something that happened, it will like draw me to it and I'll be like, okay, I want to follow this. So it's not every case, because there's a lot of them, ton of them. I mean, like you said, it's content for years with true crime, but I like to follow them and get more deep rather than, just brushing the surface on everything that's going on in different cases, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. And listen, you've definitely found yourself doing really important things and getting acknowledgement for it. I have this 1 minute and 51 second long, pretty much sizzle reel that you have up on your YouTube.
Sizzler.
Yeah, it's a sizzle reel of Jay for Justice. Jay is for Justice on Dateline, NBC. This was in 2020. Okay, I'm going to play this, and then we're going to talk about it right afterwards, because here's a little bit of an example of how there certainly seems to be a little bit of at least some overlap between worlds, where you're in the discussion and open forum world of media, and then, of course, there is, there is the playing field where it's all actually happening. So let's take a listen to this. Hold on.
Dawned over Austin, Texas. Heidi Broussard and her newborn daughter were still missing. Austin police officers were canvassing the area with the help of the Texas Rangers and FBI.
The longer that time goes by, frankly, the percent chance of recovering the mother or the children alive goes down dramatically.
We don't have a person of interest right now. We're exploring every avenue that we have and every possibility.
Heidi's friends began to fear the worst. One of them agreed to do a live interview on the podcast Jay is for Justice.
How long have you known Heidi?
The interview went on for an uneventful 90 minutes. And then...
Wait a second, you guys. We have breaking news.
All of a sudden in the chat, there was breaking news that there was a raid going on in Houston, Texas.
It says it may be connected to a high-profile case.
Heidi's friend Carly Laughlin was in the chat room and decided to do some sleuthing of her own.
I started Googling who the address belonged to.
What did you find out?
A baby registry popped up.
Carly jumped back into the podcast and typed her discovery into the live chat.
Someone just said in chat that there is a baby registry to the owners of that house.
Okay.
The podcast about Heidi took on a sudden urgency.
That's her best friend. She would not be there.
Oh my God.
It didn't make sense.
Reports came into the podcasters about disturbing developments in Houston. Something scary.
Wait a minute. I just got a text. Oh my God.
Nothing could prepare them for the devastating news that was about to be revealed.
Okay, so it's a big cliffhanger on that one. Now, this is the first time I had seen anything like this. So I would love for you to just talk about this particular situation, because there you are in the middle of it. Again, it's one thing for you to be covering this stuff and to actually talk to somebody close to the case. It's another thing to actually, in the middle of what you're producing, there's breaking news going on. You're in the middle of it. I mean, it's just an incredible testament of what independent media has become right now. So can you describe a little bit of the just the very, very key points of this case and what had happened in the middle of that broadcast you were doing?
Sure. So Heidi Broussard was a mother that went missing out of Austin, Texas with her 6-week-old baby. Well, we heard about it in the news, so our team reached out to Heidi's friends via Facebook, and one of her friends, Caressa, agreed to come on the podcast because she was missing. I mean, this was not something that was put out there to be sensational. This was really, I mean, we're looking for this woman and an infant baby. So it was, very crucial that they wanted to keep getting the word out there. So Caressa comes on the show, and we're on for about 90 minutes just talking about Heidi and who she is, and, just kind of trying to pick her brain on anything that might have seemed weird in, the last month or so. And while we were live with Caressa, the news broke in Houston, even though this happened in Austin, that there was a home being raided. And her friend didn't, pick up on that because it was a different city right at first. But it turned out it was a friend, a very good friend of Heidi, that abducted her, murdered her, put her in the trunk of her car, and had the baby in her house, pretending that it was hers. So quite crazy. And it all broke while we had one of Heidi's best friends on the show. And I was put into a position because, this was like something that I don't think has ever happened again to somebody. So I did, put her on mute so that she wasn't exposed to the whole internet while she was, finding out this news. But she didn't want to hang up with us because she didn't know what to do because it was just so shocking. So, I mean, in her words, in hindsight, she said, I'm glad that I was on with you guys when that happened. So that was her experience with that. But yeah, I mean, it was crazy being in the midst of it because there's things happening. They're finding a baby registry because this Megan had planned the whole thing, setting up a baby registry, telling her boyfriend she was pregnant, and then keeping Heidi's baby for herself.
This also, it's just another, it's a testament of how anybody can do. I mean, anybody can. I'm going to go buy myself a microphone and I'm going to learn how to stream. But to be able to approach subject matter as sensitive as this with the respect that it would take to be able to, because it's one thing to say, oh, well, we're reading a headline from the New York Post and we're going to crack a joke and we're going to give our personal takes and our theories. But when you're actually on the phone and you're dealing with people who are involved, especially when you're talking about something as tragic, a violent, some kind of a violent crime or whatever, there is so much, it's just such a fragile situation, and it really speaks a lot to your personality, the responsibility you have to take to be able to do this right. So that's really great there too. The fact that she felt comfortable around you, that says a lot about your handling of this subject matter.
I try to be very respectful. I mean, I don't approach these cases as like, a spectacle. I don't approach it that way. I approach it where I want to help raise awareness or help someone who's struggling and isn't getting answers, or, whatever, if their child's missing, it helps them. And I try to be very respectful to the sensitivity of these cases, if that makes sense. I mean, as much as you can, because there's a lot of different people out there that do things different ways.
Yeah. Well, when in the cases when I pick up stories like this, what becomes for those of you who are in this kind of a genre of media, when you are in that when you're in that category of media and you're laying out all of the aspects of a case and you're trying to get to the bottom of it and discuss it, you go way deeper than someone like I would usually, where I'll read about it and then I'll be like, oh my gosh, it's very humbling kind of a thing. So I think it takes a special type of person to make a spectacle about this, just because if it doesn't humble you, that's just like what the hell happens when we're talking about the ending of especially young lives. Like, for example, for weeks we got so much about the Idaho 4. And I really didn't get too close to the subject matter, but I mean, just the headlines alone, it's horrific. You think about, if you're a parent, you think about sending your kids off to college, and then of course they never come back, and to have it done in such a with the barbarism on top of it. What can you say about something like that? Where are those cases right now? Because we were inundated with it, and then it's all went away.
Inundated. If you're in the community, it's still inundated every day.
The rest of us, we've moved on to 98,000 other disposable stories already. So tell us about that, and I would love to get into other cases of interest.
Okay, so the Idaho 4 case has been, comparable to Bundy at this point, right? We have people from that the perpetrator is innocent, that they think they have no evidence on him, to, the other end of the spectrum there. The Idaho 4 case has been extremely, extremely huge. And it still is if you're in the true crime community and you're watching the videos, because we have 4 victims' families who have 4 different standpoints. We have 4 different victims, and then we have the one perp and a sealed case. So when you have a sealed case, it leaves it all up in the air for people to make up the wildest things. And that's why I understand why they seal cases, 100% understand that. But then on the other hand, with social media, it just leaves everything wide ass open where people can just insert, it's like insert here what you think happened.
Yeah.
So it got a little crazy, especially with the 2 surviving roommates. That whole aspect of it, we've seen them blamed. We've seen them accused of being drug dealers. We've seen them accused of being the actual murderers. And you have 2 young college-age girls. I can't even imagine my daughter is that age. I can't even imagine the trauma they're going through surviving this and then being accused of killing their friends. But it's happened, and it's sick.
So right now there's still only one perp officially, but as far as you're talking about, as far as where the internet goes with things, that is where the suspicion of the 2 surviving roommates comes from, or is that coming from more official sources?
No. Of YouTube and just YouTubers, true crime YouTubers.
It's a lot. So,
I wouldn't. Yeah, and it's just, and these girls see it because it's everywhere, and it's just that I don't like. I don't do that. When I say sensationalism, to me that's sensationalism. Like, we have to use common sense. There's a reason the case is sealed, and it's not because they don't have any evidence, right? I mean, that's just ridiculous to think. They have someone arrested. He's awaiting trial. But, people have to make more to it. And I think a lot of it is for clicks and views.
Mm-hmm. Well, it absolutely is. And there's a lot because people are hungry for it. And I think when that there's the demand is so high, and you want to be able to set yourself aside from so many other people who can and do it, that's the reason why I think, I don't know, people just resort to guerrilla media tactics like that, and it always comes out really not contributing anything nice to the situation. But as far as you said, it's sealed. What does this mean? Is there a trial ongoing, or when is that slated to happen?
Well, that's another thing, is that we don't have a trial date. They have now asked for a summer trial. So we don't know. There's no trial date. Everything is up in the air right now. So that's another thing. We just have there's no end. He has a hearing the end of this month. I believe the 26th of this month, Brian Koberger has a hearing. Because he's tried every tactic in the book, Frank. He's filed motion after motion to try to get the grand jury indictment thrown out. He's tried to get the witnesses thrown out. He's just played games with he's trolling the legal system.
What about what about his basic character profile as far as how he knew? Was he a fellow student? Because I seriously don't know too much at all.
Oh, you don't? You don't know the basics?
The basics of him, why he is the prime suspect at this point.
So he was a PhD student at a neighboring college, WSU. And these kids went to University of Idaho, but they're close. They're only 10 minutes away, even though they're in different states. So he's living in Washington State, and he crosses state lines, and he commits this murder in Moscow, Idaho. So he was a PhD student, and now it's come out that a lot of his students complained. He was creepy. He helped a girl who said her apartment got broken into. He helped her set up cameras, and it's rumored that he was the one that broke in there, and then she asked him for help. His car was seen, the white Elantra was seen in the area of the King Road house where they were murdered. We don't have a whole lot of evidence, but we have several search warrants we can read. And a lot of people think he's innocent just because they can't see that evidence right now.
So at this point, are you using it is a good amount of why you believe he is the murderer just circumstance and your gut, since everything is so sealed?
There's a lot of circumstantial evidence against him. They found a knife sheath next to one of the victims, and his DNA was on the snap.
Oh.
So that was the biggest thing. But it was such a minute amount of DNA that they sent it off to this lab called Othram in Texas. And they have a new system where they can take literally, like if you touch your shoulder and you leave DNA, like trace DNA right there, they can take from that small amount and
From fabric.
get a profile. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
From anything. They don't need hardly any, like smaller than the tip of a pen. And they can make a profile from that. So that's what they did. And they took the profile from the snap on the knife sheath, because he used a K-bar knife to stab all 4 of them. And they matched it through genealogy. They got his father's DNA and matched it through that way. And then they used genetic genealogy to figure out who he was.
And there's no reason other than he's an outsider who stalked and murdered these people. There's no other reason why his DNA would ever have been in that place.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
No,
look, I
because
mean,
the defense says there's no connection to the students.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's pretty damning.
But then you have all of these search warrants for all of their social medias, Instagram, Spotify, all these different things that he could have connected, Tinder, things like that. So we don't know if he was watching them on social media, like an incel, watching them from afar. And then there's also some creepy Reddit users that we suspect were him. Inside looking and outside looking were posting on Reddit with details of the crime before his arrest. And those people have not, again, posted.
Well, I suspect that most people on Reddit are serial killers already. So I would not be. Well, I would not be. Yeah, I would not be surprised. I think that the highest concentration of serial killers on the internet are on Reddit.
On Reddit,
I really.
You're probably right, because I think of the Long Island serial killer.
Yeah.
Okay, Rex Heuermann, right?
Yeah.
So I was researching that, and I came across some stuff on Reddit, and I feel like he could have made some posts a few years ago. But it's hard to tell. You don't know, but it's like, how would they know that? The things that they say are creepy.
It wasn't, maybe, I don't think it was Reddit. It was something else. A friend of mine, Shane Cashman, he's done a lot of really interesting work on this as well. And he had picked up, I think a couple of years ago, well, I forgot what he said, but it was some kind of a forum. Maybe it was a subreddit, where it was a whole bunch of people, mostly guys, that were getting together, and they were going through all what some people thought was a LARP, where they're just going through all these violent sexual fantasies in this forum. But my friend Shane says that he started to suspect that these were the actual real writings from at least one of these murderers out there that was leaving behind, because it looks like this was just almost like a private death club, that could, maybe it's, one guy, maybe there's one prolific killer out of all of them, but it had to be a little bit more of a network. And so I forget whether or not he said that was Reddit, but that's pretty interesting. It really
Reddit
is.
or 4chan, it's one of the two.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it was Reddit, but I'll ask him about that. Well, let me ask you about this then. Other ongoing cases, you had mentioned something very, very quickly about a doomsday couple that you were looking into. I'm very interested in doomsday cults and doomsday schemes and all that. What's the basics of this story?
All right, so this is the Chad and Lori Daybell case. Chad and Lori Daybell they have their roots in the Mormon religion, but they broke away and created their own. I don't know if what you'd even call that, but they created their own little thing. And I guess Chad Daybell had about 25,000 followers when they were arrested. But at any rate, Lori Vallow was convinced that her children were dark spirits, and Chad Daybell would rate them for her. So Chad Daybell was married when they got together, but they started going to these preparing a people events. And that was how they all met, was at this preparing a people. And they would talk about, you know, the end of the world and things like that. Well, then Chad and Lori kind of started their own little gatherings. And Chad would rate people and say, you know, they're this number dark or they're this number light. And light would mean they're good, dark would be bad. Well, he told Lori that her children were dark and that they had to do something about that. So long story short, her ex-husbands died prior to her meeting Chad. So she's had things going on with her brother. It's deep. But back to the Chad and Lori side of it, her children go missing. And she's in Hawaii with Chad, and nobody can find the children. The grandparents are scrambling around. Where are the kids? They finally arrest her, bring her into court. She's told she has to produce these children, and she doesn't. They end up buried on Chad Daybell's property there in Rexburg, Idaho. So one day, all of a sudden, we see there's choppers and people digging, and they found their bodies. So Lori, the mother of these children, was convicted, and she is now just been transferred over to Arizona to face more charges for the death of her ex-husband. Chad Daybell is going on trial, and his trial starts, fittingly, April Fool's Day. So that's one we're definitely going to be covering. It's just crazy, these cults. We have these other YouTubers, 8 Passengers, Ruby Frankie and Jody Hildebrandt, another Mormon spinoff of,
I'm telling you,
cult-like behavior.
Jay, this is a very, very common thing. We were more and more we're looking into it. I mean, this was something that was popping up when I was talking with Mike King of Profiling Evil not too long ago. Mm-hmm. Also, in our own little circles, we have some old school private investigators that are friends of mine that they saw the Hamlin case in Utah developing from the onset. And of course, that is all tied into Mormon church. And there's that aspect of satanic ritual abuse and trafficked orphans. And it's incredible, the pattern. And it always crosses state lines. And sometimes it goes international. It's nuts. It's nuts.
It's nuts, too. When we couldn't watch Lori's trial because it was audio only. The judge didn't allow cameras. But all of these people in their orbit testified against them, and they got deals. And it's like they knew what happened to those kids. You know they knew what happened to those kids, but the only ones who paid the price were Chad and Lori. So this problem isn't going to end. You know, these people still believe their effed up beliefs, and they just, you know, testified against these two, and then they're on their way still doing the same stuff.
Do you see cult activity? I mean, I know that you look through the world through, I don't know, through whatever kind of lens glasses you have there, you're gonna see it all over the place. But if this is what you do you see cult activity on the rise in these cases? Because I think it's the most pervasive thing that we have going for us, but most people can't detect it because most people don't. I don't know. I don't think that we really react to things rationally anymore. I think it's only through more fixed, predictable, limited sets of responses, and it's usually tied to group identity, which blocks every other kind of a really valuable point of discernment out there. And I don't know. I see this thing becoming a lot more pervasive than people think. What do you usually see some kind of a string of cult-like or ritualistic flair to things these days?
I feel like, I don't know if I see more of it, because like really the Chad and Lori thing was my first kind of dip in the water with that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was just absolutely shook. I really didn't know much about the Mormon religion before that happened. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like people are more going to be like, see something, say something. And maybe these cults are going to be more put on blast rather than hidden anymore. I kind of feel like there's more awareness to what's going on with these cults. And it's just, I feel like COVID as well got people more into finding somewhere to belong. And that's what's really scary.
That's very profound right there, because other channels that I really enjoy watching, like Truth Stream Media, really graceful, that some of them have become really good friends of ours. They had done such great work, and we did too. To an extent. I went into the old police records of I think it's from the mid '80s or the early '90s, of how to break down cult indoctrination and where this really goes. I think we did the profiling of a death cult. I think that's what we did about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And when you hold it up against the COVID timeline that we were living through, it is astounding when you see how important isolation was, the breaking and changing of routines, the taking away from breaking away from a person's family. There is it's like cleaning your own slate, and reprogramming yourself. And that is done obviously in very microcosmic ways in these smaller little cults and groups. But when you see how that has been laid out on a national and international program, it definitely hits all the same markers for bringing people into a new way of seeing reality. Not even just, I have to wear a mask to go to the bank today. It's just everything, the hypochondria, the paranoia, the being able to, the no loyalty to friends and family. You'll rat them all out. It's, I think you really hit on something there.
Yeah, I just think as a whole, not even just in the true crime, I've seen my family in itself, argue about politics, and they don't speak to each other over it. And it's like, what? I just think that people lost. I don't know how to put it into words. I think what you said was perfect. I just think that as far as in the true crime genre, people have found places where they fit in, and they want to fit in somewhere, and they're lost souls, and they meet these people, and they're going to these preparing a people, like in the Chad and Lori case, because they're looking for something,
I think,
but I haven't got into cults as deep as you have.
Well, there's plenty of time.
Well, it's one of those things where maybe you don't want to get too close sometimes with that.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I asked you up front. Are there things that you just say, I like the distance I am from this. I think we can still do good work from this distance. And
yeah, I'll give you an example. The Danny Masterson trial. I said, I ain't touching it. I live near Clearwater. I'm not touching it. Sorry.
Wow.
I'm just not doing it.
Why? Why is that though? Why
because
is that?
of the Scientology. I just didn't want to go there.
Forgot about the Scientology aspect. That's
yeah,
right.
They had his back and everything else. And I was like, nope, that's just one I'm not going to do.
Well, listen, you want to talk about, again, all the deals that are made for people, the way, the astounding ways that some of these people have wiggled their way out of really, really serious issues when they have been tied to things like some of those Mormon churches in Utah, or even just other towns and cities that seem to be consumed by a certain way of doing things. Like I said, we have friends that had spent nearly 30 years digging into digging into Boulder, Colorado, and not even just focusing on JonBenet Ramsey, but being able to set the backdrop of the entire city of what was going on leading up to that very well publicized murder. And when you consider institutions, they sometimes they may wear a Catholic face, a Mormon face, this and that. They have all the different, all the uniforms, all the costumes that they could wear. But there is just a very familiar evil thread that runs through it all, and it does not matter what it inhabits, just as long as it continues to consume. And that, I think, in itself is the scariest thing about poking into these poking into these stories, even for cops, by the way, because I'm sure another thing that you have come across the way is there's plenty of law enforcement who have, tried to do the right thing, and they have come up against the wall of resistance within their own departments, and sometimes have even lost their lives because they're not crooked. It's serious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we saw that with the Long Island serial killer, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
That's up there by you with the corruption in the PD.
Yep.
With the sex workers and all that too.
Absolutely. I mean, that cop and his girlfriend brought the stripper to Huerman's house, right?
Right.
I mean,
right.
that's just the tip of the iceberg of all that weirdness that keeps coming out.
Yeah, that whole thing's bizarre.
Have you ever tried to get in touch with the lawyer out there? What was his name? Parker? I forget what his name is.
Oh, the lawyer for the Gilgo victims?
He usually wears the very fancy hats.
I did actually reach out to him, but he told me to call him, and I called him, and then the next thing I know, he was on court TV. So I was like, he's probably not going to entertain me at this point. But yeah, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
I think that you would do great with him, and he probably would entertain it, because just like with the Idaho 4, I know that that the Long Island serial killer is very, very it's a hot topic for people who are in this, but I'm sure that somebody who is actually working the case wants as much attention to stay on it as possible.
Yeah, Mr. John Ray, that's his name.
Ray, not Park, sorry. Yes.
John Ray, yeah, and he wears the funky outfits, but you know what? He's done a great job having the back of these girls and their families. And I think that's another really interesting thing, is that we've gone from calling sex workers hookers and not caring about them going missing or ending up dead, to calling them sex workers and actually having lawyers and people fighting for their justice, which didn't happen before, right?
No. Yeah.
There wasn't any kind of empathy for sex workers. I mean, look at what was that, Operation Midnight, or what was that called, that the CIA did back in the day, where they watched the men have sex with the prostitutes.
That could be. Honestly, I'm not familiar, but that sounds like
it happened. It was called Operation Midnight, and that was when they were investigating. They were trying psychotropics out, so they would have these prostitutes bring these guys back, give them LSD, and then watch them have sex with the prostitute.
Speaking of cops,
Mm-hmm.
speaking about all this stuff, have you done any diving into Delphi?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well,
yeah.
What about, because we did a little bit on this not too long ago, and there's another example of the cops getting caught lying. What do you know? Well, why did it take, for example, like, I don't know, where are you with that one? Because I remember the last time we were talking about this, there was just an incredible tug of war going on between the judge and also the police were really they were just caught being very I don't know, I not forthright about what they had.
See, and that's the case where I don't think they were not being forthright. I feel like they were keeping it close to the vest.
Just for the integrity of the investigation, you mean?
Sure. Yes.
That's what you think? Okay.
Absolutely. I do. That's my personal opinion. I don't think that but I mean, during an investigation, they do press conferences. They do lie to the public if they haven't caught their perpetrator yet. So a lot of people, forget that when they do press conferences, it's not always just to give the public information. Sometimes it's to put things out there for the perpetrator to see if he makes a move, or if it makes him do something, or, whatever the case may be, whatever they're investigating, they put things out there like that to kind of trip them up or make them think they're not on their tail, or maybe think they are on their tail. So I don't think in the Delphi case that they're lying. I feel like it was deeper once they got into it, because there's Keegan Kline. I don't know if you're familiar with that character in this case, but he was a huge piece of this. He was the one that communicated with the two girls the day that they were murdered, right? He set up the meeting to meet at the bridge with his social media, Anthony Schatz. Well, Keegan Kline wasn't there. So they ended up arresting this Richard Allen. But Richard Allen and Keegan Kline could have communicated via this pedo stuff. So Keegan Kline was the pedo setting up meetings and catfishing young girls on Instagram with Abby and Libby included. And I believe that, and this is just my opinion because we don't know yet, but I do think that Keegan Kline was setting up meetings and maybe like selling that meeting to a pedo. You know what I'm saying? Like he wasn't the one. He was making the hookups and then telling them where to go.
You see, these are the theories that you can have a little bit of time to develop once you really are in there. That's why I have to keep checking in on work that people like you are doing, because it really does go. It sometimes flies right by me, especially.
Well, I mean, those are details you're not going to get just reading an article.
I know
those are.
Yeah.
So you're not going to know those things just because you're just reading something really quick. So yeah, I mean and there's so much more to Delphi than that. I mean, there's been the Odinism theory, but I do believe that this broke open with a pedo ring type thing going on. And I think it just was more than what they expected.
A lot more. Well, let me ask you this: going into the new year, especially now that we become brand new friends over here, what are you most excited to do this year? Do you have a lot of things, any personal projects or things that you're ready to release? Are you just looking to have another good 12 months of doing your show and seeing where the news takes you? Well,
no, it's an exciting year, Frank. It's
Okay.
2024, and I'm on the cusp of 100K. So I'm almost to 100K on YouTube. And we have actually a trial coming up this month.
Which one?
This is for Jennifer and James Crumbly in Michigan. They are the school shooter Ethan Crumbly's parents. And this is the first, and this has never happened before. The parents are charged with manslaughter because they purchased the gun that Ethan used to shoot four of his classmates. So they've been in jail since 2021, and just recently their trials were separated. So now we have, I believe it's going to be the mother, Jennifer Crumbly is going to be first. And we're going to be streaming that on my channel starting January 26th. We've been following this case for 2 years.
These two have been in jail since for almost 3 years?
Since December of 2021. And they took off after the shooting and went and hid in a warehouse in Detroit.
I think I remember that.
There. Yeah, they're jerks, man. But they bought this 14-year-old a gun that clearly had mental issues and was asking them for help, telling him he heard voices. They didn't do anything about it. They went and took him to a gun shop and bought him a gun, and he had this gun, and he killed his classmates. So they're on trial. And that's going to be a really, really interesting one. I think everybody should pay attention to that because it sets a precedence, right?
Well, it's huge precedent, but and that's the reason why I'm thinking about where the hell, despite whether or not these people are scumbags and irresponsible, where the hell I fall on this in the grander question about civil liberties but when you think about a 14-year-old being still the legal property of the parents. And if they are diagnosed, I mean, I don't know. I can see how they're. Then again, I have nothing really. I don't know where to point to in a court of law. But and of course, this might really just be beholden to Michigan. This is Michigan state law too.
This has never happened before. So this was the prosecutor in Michigan, Oakland County.
But it's just Michigan. It didn't cross state lines, right?
Oh no. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Small town. Oxford, Michigan is a little town. It's actually like 20 minutes from where I grew up in Romeo. So it hits close to home. So that one has been big for me. I followed that pretty extensively. And there's been a lot of, stuff going on with the school board where they weren't following the guidelines of school shooting prep. Their emergency plan wasn't in place. They weren't following it. So there's a lot that goes along, not just the parents, but it's going to be interesting, Frank, because he was charged as an adult and he got life with no parole.
At 14?
Well, yeah, now he's 16. He was just sentenced a couple months ago in December. So he is charged as an adult. And this is what I think gets kind of tricky. So if he's charged as an adult and then you're holding his parents accountable.
Exactly.
I've had people say that, like, how can you have it both ways? But I think what it boils back down to is that the dad actually took him and purchased the gun, and then they posted on social media, this is his Christmas present, da-da-da-da-da. And they were also neglectful, according to neighbors and things.
I just don't.
Little.
I'm telling you, I just don't know. I just don't know.
It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Very, very slippery because it is not illegal for a 10-year-old to own a bolt action rifle or anything. You can you can. And
a Sig Sauer.
Oh, I mean, who cares at that point? If it's a semi-automatic weapon, you pull the trigger once and you get one bullet come out of it. You can train with anything, and I think that children everybody should know what they're doing and should be able to use it like any other tool safely and understand proper handling of it. Just so that the more people understand how to keep ourselves from actually being able to, keep ourselves from having any horrible accidents out of ignorance, and to also be able to respond when people are actually in need of help, because we know that police aren't going to be there for everything that we need. So it's very odd. Right. It's like you said, I'd be surprised if this is not a big trial. You said it's this summer?
Yes. No, it's January 26th.
Oh, this month.
Yeah. It starts this month. Well, hers does.
I'd be
hers
very
starts
surprised
this month
if this gets buried. I'd be very surprised because I can see how this means something very important to everybody.
It should be important to everybody, and I think everybody should pay attention.
Yeah.
Parents alike. I mean, because not only could it happen with a gun, could it happen with something else? So it's important, I think, for everybody to pay attention to this and see where it goes.
Well, Jay, this has been very, very fun. I can't wait to have you back. I hope that you'll come back. And
I hope you'll have me back.
Oh, absolutely. This is fun.
Yay!
This is very fun. And we'll get into what we'll do is next time you come back, we'll talk about what's new out there, new developments, but then we'll also pick like one banner, creepy, incredible story at a time, and we'll just focus on something. We'll have like story time here with Jay and Frank. That'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So
I'd love to.
So I know that you're climbing toward 100,000, and you have a great show, and we have a lot of great people in your audience. I've been watching them all mixing it up in the YouTube chat room and elsewhere. You got really, really awesome people out there.
I do. I have a great audience. They're the best.
You're going to skip right past 100,000. So let everybody know where to find you, what you got coming up, and yeah.
All right. Well, you can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on X. And we've got, like I said, the Crumbly trial coming up, and we are live every Monday and Friday with videos in between. So
nice. What time is the live broadcast?
I do mix it up. It's either 10 a.m. or 3 p.m. Those are my two sweet times. So.
Oh, that's nice. So you get a lot. Yeah. I bet you get a lot of Europeans watching too.
I do. I love my Europeans. Actually, one of my right-hand girls is from the UK. So
I got to do some more, early on in the day stuff. Oh, actually, I do on Tuesdays. Tomorrow morning, around 9:00, I usually just do a coffee stream just for my iPad on YouTube. So that's usually when we get a lot of our European friends there because it's finally an acceptable hour to be awake.
Yeah, for sure. They love the morning streams. They're like,
well, I'll tell you, this is a great time having you on, and you do great work. You got a great voice. I can talk to you all night.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next time you're on, and all the best to you and yours. And yeah, everybody go check out Jay is for Justice. I have her on the YouTube description. I have her tagged right in there, so you can go hop over to her channel. And elsewhere, just go into the description. I have the actual URL written out. Jay, until next time, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Frank. It was great. And hey, if any of your listeners come over, let me know you came from Quite Frankly.
Oh, they will. They're very, very, they're a very, very proud bunch.
All right. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Love your show.
Have a good night. Thank you so much.